Thank you, Mr. Presiding. Thank you, Mr. Presiding Officer, for allowing me the opportunity to lend my support to this motion. And following my colleague, Secretary for Food Production, let's just get straight into it in the essence of time. I'd like to start off with my projection of the goals that were set a year ago when I stood before this honorable House. And I'd like to itemize the list of projects and programs that we wanted to achieve starting of last November. And I'll quickly go down the list, and I'd either say that it was achieved or it wasn't achieved. Goodwood Pavilion was not achieved. Phase 2 of Shaw Park offices was not achieved. Indoor facility was not achieved. Timers, electrical timers for all hard court lights and field lights was achieved. Repairs to the Pembroke Youth Center was not achieved. Surveys to various facilities, including Roxborough, Shaw Park, Bacalet, Goodwood, Mount Pleasant, was achieved. Designs for the youth office at Shaw Park was not achieved. Increasing the capacity of holding workshop for our coaches on the island was achieved. Community program for girls, elderly, and differently abled was not achieved. The increased level of participation with the sport discipline basketball was not achieved. Applying a user fee to the facilities, all sporting facilities, was not achieved. The Youth Assembly, I put an asterisk on that. Tobago Youth Policy was not achieved. Workshop to encourage volunteerism and civic duty among Tobago youth was not achieved. Let's Read youth program was not achieved. Mail on the Block program was not achieved. And last but not least, expanding PE coaches or instructors to ECC schools was achieved. Based on what was outlined, Mr. Presiding Officer, one can easily come to the conclusion that there wasn't a good year for the Secretary of Sport and Youth Affairs and the division. However, fortunately or unfortunately, I can apply the rationale that COVID derailed many of our programs. And I'd like to say most of these, particularly the programs, were definitely derailed by the COVID pandemic. However, as I mentioned, with regards to the Youth Assembly, and I'll start with that. On Thursday, we are scheduled to have our elections, so we definitely would have an assembly in place, a youth assembly, by the end of this year. So I'd like to the Goodwood Pavilion, which my dear colleague on the other side made mention of, in which he wanted to have a sword turning and bells and whistles. UDCOT is the project manager for that construction of the pavilion, and they have given us a start date of the 18th of November. I take that with a pinch of salt. We do have a letter ready for UDCOT, that if the construction, if bulldozers and then taking the field, today is what, the 8th? When is the 18th? Wednesday? Yeah, a letter will be fired off to UDCOT to provide an explanation. But per the project schedule, The 18th of November is when the construction of that facility would begin. Against a tight timeline, my dear colleague, the South Turning would have to waive, but we will invite you as a concerned resident of the area not to attend the opening later on in 2021. Perhaps I may be invited, perhaps we may be invited to attend. And I've listed some of the achievements, or very few achievements. However, I want to point out there are some things that I didn't make mention of last November that we were able to achieve. One of which would have been the Sid Gray repairs to that facility. We did spend a considerable sum of money, a couple million, just to get that up to standard. So we did achieve that. We did facilitate and initiate a memorandum of understanding with St. Vincent for sport youth development, specifically for netball and cricket. Football was carried to have that MOU signed. However, COVID again derailed that signing of that document. Hope got the long-awaited walk-around track, which they had been lobbying for. Part and parcel of the development of that area, recognizing that they do have a settlement housing development area, and that has increased the population in that area. It is in the intent to provide field lights at the next phase of that project. Again, COVID derailed this initiative. The Leicester City Football Academy had committed to come to and participate in a youth tournament, a regional youth tournament in Tobago, which would have provided an opportunity for our youngsters on the island to be scouted and probably recruited to be part of that academy. They were all set and ready to attend. Again, COVID derailed that initiative, but they are still interested, and hopefully next year would be a lot better than this year, and still will provide the youngsters on the island and the region the opportunity to be recruited by a Premier League football academy. And as everyone around this horseshoe and in attendance would acknowledge and accept that this would be probably my last contribution and my last, again, contribution in this house. Over the last 4 years, the division, a new entity, made some strides within the short space of time that we were in existence. I just want to highlight some of the achievements, and I know in particular order: the building of or opening of youth centers, bringing back sport awards that was out for, I would say, more than 10 years, having a Tobago sport policy, initiating and implementing the Lalonde Gordon Fund for our elite athletes, creating the athlete reward policy and program, which both that and the Lalonde Gordon are intricately interwoven with each other, recognizing that this year, 2020, was to be the Olympics, which again, COVID derailed. Field lights in some of the communities. And mentioning field lights, again, I refer back to my dear colleague on the other side, who made a passionate plea for lights at Richmond. And she made also a plea for the maintenance of Bell Garden. We do recognize that Richmond is one of the larger fields on the island. I want to point out that we work with a very small budget, but I'm hoping that within the next administration, the next PNM administration, which will be next year. Within the next 4 years, that will be addressed. However, against that backdrop, it was decision, and it is hope that it still can be actualized, that between Pembroke and or Belgarden, we will install lights. Those are a lot smaller, a lot cheaper to facilitate. We are waiting for the Corland project, light project, to be completed so that we could possibly do as much in-house as we can, learning from that experience, because the fields in Pembroke and Belgarden are quite a lot smaller. So once that project in Corland is completed, which is anticipated to be end of December, early January, we would be off and running, putting together the scope of works for the smaller fees from that project. So rest assured, it's not out of neglect, out of lack of funds and putting things in priority. We are leaning towards Belgarden because Belgarden does have a football team versus Earl Brooks, who have finally called it a day, at least in the Tobago Football Association. Again, mentioning some of the programs that we've had and projects that we have achieved within the last 4 years. As a secretary, there are 3 achievements that I'm very proud of being part of, and being part of the division. One of which, as I mentioned earlier, the Youth Assembly. It is something that the youth on the island have been clamoring for. And I want to go back to what the Honorable Chief Secretary had mentioned. That a lot of people and a lot of youths on the island look up to us, and we have to carry ourselves in a particular manner, particularly in the house. I would hate to think that they pick up all our bad traits coming into the house. As I mentioned, the Youth Assembly is one of my prouder achievements. The indoor facility, long awaited, long clamored for. The construction for that should start the end of this month. Again, letters are waiting to be fired off if that deadline is not met by UDCOT. Youth Assembly, Tobago, the indoor facility, and last but not least, our performance on the sporting arena. When I first came into office 7 years ago, a little more than 7 years ago, I made mention there would be a time when we would ask the question, how many Trinidadians would be on the national team? Because Tobago would be the dominant numbers on the team. I'm proud to say I've seen that happen. Last year, the national netball team was comprised of 8 out of 12 young ladies were selected and represented Trinidad and Tobago. I don't think that has ever happened in Trinidad and Tobago's history, and I'm very proud of it to the netball fraternity. Even the Honorable Secretary for Education made mention that now we are national high school champions, national primary school champions in netball. And I'm even more proud about it because this came about without the indoor facility, which lent credence to what I've been advocating all along. If you have committed coaches, committed athletes, the facility is very low on the totem pole in achieving your ultimate goal. Again, I'm very happy and proud for the netball fraternity for churning out or making me a prophet of sorts and prophesying that we'll get to that point when we will be dominating the sporting arena in Trinidad and Tobago. The goals for the 2021 fiscal year are as follows: completion of the indoor facility, completion of the Goodwood Pavilion, completion of Hall Field lights, completion of Idlewild washroom, Plymouth Pavilion repairs, Pembroke Youth Center, and the My Help customized bus for the youth program and going around in communities and meeting with our youngsters, or youth, I should say, sorry. I want to take this opportunity to say thanks. Thanks to my electoral district of Lambo Signal Hill for supporting me in the last 8 years. To all the groups, village councils, individuals within this electoral district, I'm very grateful for the support and the advice and the encouragement over the last 8 years. To the staff of the newest division, thank you. To all the administrators who helped me along the way, I am grateful. I want to single out who I want to refer to as the mother of the Division of Sport and Youth Affairs, Ms. Wendy Guy Hernandez, who laid a very solid and strong foundation that any administrator coming thereafter has a roadmap of how things should be done. To the friends and family who've supported me on this journey, thank you. I am forever grateful. I've said this ad nauseum. Most of the achievements in my life, 90 to 95%, is because of friends, family that have encouraged me along the way. My contribution is very minimal, probably about 5%. So I am grateful for everybody who made me who I am today. This administration, the PNM administration, I'm proud to be part of this esteemed team, the last term, and in particular this term. We have done a lot with very little, and we should be proud of what we have achieved so far. Julius Caesar once said, I came, I saw, I conquered. This administration, we came, we improvised, and we delivered in this administration. To everyone around this horseshoe, everyone listening, in my famous closing statement as usual, good luck, Godspeed, Jomo Pitt, I out.
Members, we'll take the break at this time. The House now stands suspended for 30 minutes. We resume at 5 p.m.